So, dear all, it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have Professor Subha Ramani. She is an excellent medical educator and well known around the world. And she is a general internist and a medical educationalist. She graduated from University of Madras in India, and then she continued residency in India, but then she moved to the States and she had postgraduate general medicine fellowship at Boston University and a master's in public health also at Boston University. 20 years ago, she moved her focus to medical education, although continuing with all the health care practice. And it's incredible what she has done, because she has worked and done the program for Stanford, for programs for Harvard. She also worked giving programs for Dundee and for Maastricht. So all of these are top medical schools, and she was working in their curriculums. She had also several roles in her institution, namely in terms of leadership, and she was a director for a year-long longitudinal program for research, and the director of the Scholars in Medical Education Pathway for the Internal Medicine Residence Program, and the lead for Global Perspectives and Community for the Brigham Education Institute. And so on, it continues and continues, and I would advise you to read her curriculum if you have not done it so far. And international, she has also several roles, and at AMI, she is a member of the executive committee. We have been together, the two, for several years, and the chair of the AMI Fellowship Committee. She's a visiting professor of the University of Indonesia and an honorary professor at the University of Manchester in UK. So, and she formed a global community of mentors and scholars who publish and present webinars and workshops around this topic. So the areas of research and scholarship mainly include staff development in clinical teaching, application of educational theory to practice, so the translation from education to practice, sociocultural factors that influence feedback, conversations, mentoring, and qualitative research. And and lots of publications, some of them very, very important, that you can look in the internet. And I think I would not say more, because you will see when she starts talking how interesting and how important is what Subha has to give us today. Thank you, Subha.
Thank you, Magdalena. I should have recorded this and played this back to my mother in India.
But I can write to your mother in India if you want. I will. It would be my pleasure to write her a letter. Okay.
Everyone wants a letter to their mother. So I'm happy to see Helena Felipe, who's on this session, and she's one of the members. We work together on the mentors. We call ourselves Mentors Across Borders. Very informal group. This is not based on an organization, institution. We just came together due to interest in mentoring and education and scholarship. And we do webinar. Actually, we don't do webinars. What we do is facilitate conversations in education. So everybody's opinion is very important. So it's very nice to meet everybody. So today, on the topic of feedback, I'd like to encourage a conversation. We're all educators. Many of us are clinical educators. So we know how challenging this feedback is. And I'm also going to challenge some.
Pode pôr mudo, sorry, Subha.
That's okay.
Pôr os microfones mudos, se faz favor. Obrigado. Okay, I hope.
So I want to go away from the traditions of how we talk about feedback, giving feedback, as if we take something and give a gift to our learners. And I want to talk about this as a sociocultural phenomenon and a conversation. And I am not the expert. I will bring some principles to the table. You will bring your experience to the table. And then each one, I don't know if you know the word potluck in Portuguese. You know how you go to somebody's home and each one brings a dish to eat and you can take whatever you want. So that is, I would like to think of today's conversation as a potluck. You take whatever principles apply to your life and what you think will suit your learner conversations. With that, let me start the slideshow. Okay, so I hope everyone can see the slides.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So this is a very different topic as you see the title. It's what makes feedback credible. Credible means believable to the learners, acceptable. You have to believe something to accept it, and meaningful, meaning it causes change and growth. With So this is the learning goals. We'll redefine feedback from the learner's perspective, not from the teacher's perspective. And then we have 3 pearls, pearls meaning the jewel, from the oyster, pearls. Credibility is the first pearl, mindset is the second, and the last one is coaching. So the original definition of feedback is the practice of providing information to learners about their performance in clinical situations to guide their future performance. So the first part is now we're going to do what we call an icebreaker. So you are going to type in the chat your reactions in 2 or 3 words, no more than 2 or 3 words to this statement. The main purpose of feedback is for learners to get input from the teacher on their performance. So please go ahead and share your reactions via the chat. Anything you can say. Okay, welcome feedback, learn and progress. Absolutely. So Helena broke the ice. Now everyone else will follow. One off, very good. So Louise says it's not complete. It's only one part of the feedback. Communicate, okay, yes. And this is not communication. This is like telling the learner. Trigger reflections, yes. So basically what I'm seeing from some of the chat is you're thinking that this statement is not complete. This is not all there is to feedback. Keep typing in the chat and let's see. So based on the original descriptions of feedback or the definitions, I came up with this model in there was an article in the Journal of General Internal Medicine, reflections on feedback. So it's like recipes. So teachers assess or appraise performance of learners. Teachers provide these data to the learners and some magic happens, some magical reaction happens and learners improve performance. And teachers, unfortunately, are making 2 assumptions. One is assessment or appraisal data is accurate without observation of performance. And sometimes we know that. And the other assumption is feedback. The minute teachers provide feedback, feedback is accepted by the learner, and then they begin growing. And what is it? Even trees need and plants need fertilizer. So we can only say this is the fertilizer. So the other people started questioning this definition. And Professor Bingyu and his colleague Trowbridge, they're from the northeastern part of the United States, from the state of Maine, Maine Medical Center. And they have done some work on feedback. And they said, educators may have been too focused on a very narrow view of feedback, just as you said in the chat. An approach to improving feedback should incorporate teacher behaviors, but also learner cognitive principles. And I will say learner emotional reactions as well, and a focus on relationships, teacher-learner relationships. So Professor David Bowd from Australia, and he was one of the first people to start arguing that we should be looking at feedback definition from the learner perspective. He says, it doesn't matter how it is given, it is effective only when it's taken up by the learner and leads to behavior change. Again, as you said in the chat message. So with that in mind, I like that definition. So basically, what is the purpose of feedback? Creating growth on the part of the recipient of feedback. Therefore, it doesn't matter how you give it. If I speak to you, each one of you, I will speak differently. We are different human beings. So no two people say the same thing to everybody. And it's the same with our learners. We can't go on recipes. It depends on the relationship, the personalities, the context. So let's go to the 3 pearls. The first is credibility. The second is mindset. And the third is coaching. So I want to do a very quick small group exercise so that you can speak in English in your small groups, you can speak in Portuguese in your small groups, but I will give you about 5 minutes for this exercise. Okay. So how many people are there? Let's see. 32. So let's do 4 groups, and the first 2 groups will focus on the first exercise. Just think of a time you received constructive feedback. It was difficult to hear, but then you accepted it. So talk amongst your groups, reasons why you accepted it. Groups 3 and 4 will do the second part, which is reflect on a feedback experience when you received feedback and you rejected it. So why did you reject it? So let's do 7 minutes. Let's see if I can. Okay, so the first exercise, let me do this. I should probably copy and post it in the chat so that okay, here we go. I'm posting it so that when you go into the breakout groups, you're still able to see this. And let me stop sharing. And let's do breakout. I don't know if I can create breakout. I think so.
Don't count on me.
4. Okay. But only the host can actually time it. So I'll just time it manually. Okay. So 6 minutes or so. The first 2 groups, groups 1 and 2, do the first thing, which why did you accept feedback? Groups 3 and 4 talk about why you reject feedback. And when we come, the group reporters will just present literally 1 minute per group. Okay.
Olá, Luís.
Não sabia.
Hello.
É suposto entrar numa das salas?
Subha, you know what is our number group?
I am looking. Where am I? I'm lost. Should be at the top, actually.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Breakout groups. We are. Hang on 1 second. As soon as I broadcast, I can see. It's not even showing me. Hang on, hang on. Usually it should be at the top. Let's see. Do you know my name is not even appearing? Okay.
3 persons has no room.
I will assign.
You can put in our.
Yeah. There we go. I've assigned them.
Okay, room 1. Our is not one.
Yeah, let me look for you, Luis. Oh, room 3.
Okay.
The room 3.
Nice.
So why do you reject feedback?
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. So I'm going to let you speak and mute myself.
Okay. So, olá, Carlos. Boa tarde.
Todo mundo se une.
So what's happening?
I
Do we
don't
have
understand.
people?
Rosangela, she's not in the room 1. And Irani also. What must they do to go in?
I can do it. Let's see.
Irani,
Somebody is having problems with the internet, they said.
have it connection.
Let's see. I moved.
Lucy and Rosangela are from the room 1.
Yeah. So no unassigned, but so Rosangela did not join and maybe having internet connection
No, but
issues.
she's responding me.
Okay.
Allah. Room 1. And Irani, where is Irani? Is to the room 2?
Yes, room 2.
Yeah, right. I can send her a message. Irani, you must go.
Because I think we'll be bringing people back very soon.
Okay. And try your papers about how to increase the lessons with the students, with the patients in the ward and also at the consultation. Very nice papers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Feedback. It's
You
important.
said you're a dermatologist, right?
Yes, I'm
Clinic.
dermatologist, so I give lessons to the great groups. We divided the persons in 4 groups because it is semester, so we can move to 2 groups from each semester. We have the theorics to all the people, and after we have the small groups for the practical lessons. Now with the virus, you have just two students each time, so it's more difficult.
I'm going to say return. I'll give them 2-minute warning.
Yes.
So at least everyone is having a good conversation. I'm just going to go to each of the rooms and listen.
Okay.
Even if they're speaking in Portuguese.
Okay.
I want to see if they're having fun.
Okay, go ahead. They are returning, yes.
Subha,
Yes.
we didn't write, it was supposed to write in the chat, or is it to talk?
You can just say, that's fine. Just pick three important things. Even if you had 10, we'll do 3. Madalena, I'm sure we'll have 20, but
Just
Now
10.
it's not me who are going to talk, is Elena. I have here just some notes just in case, but if you want, we can put in the chat later, but not now.
Patricia looks so much like a friend of mine. I was thinking, her name is Jane, and I was thinking, how did Jane come here? Do you know there's a saying that if you go all around the world, there are 6 other people that look exactly like you. It's a superstition.
So, and I would ask if we have no problems with internet to leave the videos open, because it's so different. It's the way to interact. If we just have names, it's awful. If we see that the quality goes too down, we stop. But if, in principle, if you can leave your cameras on, okay, it's much better.
Yes, we are not very scary. I'm not a very scary person. So, and Helena can tell you that.
You're admirable person, Subha.
You're too kind, Helena. So, group 1, who's the group reporter for group 1?
Micro.
É o nosso? Eu não lembro se somos o 1 ou 2.
Não, nós somos o 2, Isabel.
É o nosso Isabel, é o 1.
Nosso? É.
Let's
Okay.
see, it's the group with Eduardo, Isabel. It's a group with Isabel.
Patrícia, Alda, Hildeberto, Eduardo. Well, we did not discuss any particular case. We reflected on the benefits or the importance of feedback in general. And I've took some notes.
Okay.
1, to identify with the concepts to be understood, elements of discovery, what actions we can take.
Okay.
Emotional dimension, empathy, also a reward of the helping the person to be able to develop or to stimulate the potential of development of the person, and the sense of agency that someone can change the other person.
Okay, excellent.
I don't know if I did all the
So
the ideas,
essentially you're talking about the relationship, the way people engage in the conversation, the emotional reactions, but then the priority is growth and development and agency, that you're here to help the other person grow. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
and those are the factors that makes feedback acceptable. Okay, very good. So group 2
Elena?
is Madalena's
It's
group.
mine. Yes. Elena is going to talk because I talk too much.
So now it's my turn. So
Okay.
we were talking about we would like to have a constructive criticism, not judgment, and focus on the action. Also, we would like to have a feedback that is precise, short, clear, also using the appropriate words in this process, helps the student to have motivation to go on and to also be able to see the person in this process of giving feedback. And at the end, we feel it's very important to be able to ask the student at the end of the feedback to see if the student understand our words or feedback, and if not, just try to find a way so the student can really understand our message. I think that was it. I don't know if I miss an important part of the group.
No, I think we also said just one minor thing, that when I see that it's feasible, that I can go and do what I propose to be done, it's easier to jump. If it's something very difficult, sometimes I drop out or don't move or so on. So the question that it's something practical and feasible and doable, it's good.
Yeah, it's not like change your face or grow 6 feet tall if you're 5 foot tall, but then it's something that you can do and something that you can change. And in fact, if many of you may be interested, if you go to Harvard Business Review and look at their feedback articles, they are some of the best feedback articles in the business literature. There is one that says feedback conversations should start from the strength of the person, not start from the weakness of the person. Okay, take the strength and then focus on the weaknesses, how the strength can make the weakness better. Elena, the other thing is, you're talking exactly the physician-patient or the clinician-patient alliance, right? Same language. The language is important, open-ended, precise, and check their understanding. So in fact, there are people from University of British Columbia and now Australia as well. They've written about the Educational Alliance. And it was a psychology student who was doing a PhD with Kevin Ava and all those people, Glenn Reger, who wrote about Educational Alliance. And it came out of the Patient Alliance. So thank you. Thank you very much, Group 2. So Group 3, who is the reporter? Let's see which group that is. The group with Louise's group.
Yes, I think that it's for me to give the report. Our group had Fábio, Carmona, Mariana, Pedro, Stella, Virginia, and myself. Well, we discussed that we agreed that there is an interplay of several factors, different factors, but that could be simplified in three groups: factors related to who is receiving the feedback, previous experiences, personality, and so on. The other domain would be who is giving the feedback. And if it's someone who I admire, is my role model, he or she, it's someone very respected, then the likelihood of this being credible increases, whatever is the point of the conversation. And the third and perhaps most important domain would be the conversation, the communication, if it is respectful or not, and if the point is specifically defined, if there is a presentation of criteria that allows you to reflect on how far you are from the objective to be reached, and so on. Yeah. I think that I am not sure if I could gather everything, but it's my point to report to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 3. And last, Group 4. And you know, I will show a slide as soon as we finish our group reflections, which talks about factors to enhance credibility. So Group 4 with Helena's group and Maria Rosa's group.
Well, we didn't select one reporter. Is there anyone who would like to report our group's reflection? I can do my best, and if I miss,
Denise is saying that she wants, I think, Elena. No. Okay.
If no one,
okay.
If
Denise is volunteering, Helena.
I can do it. Please complete anything that I can miss. Well, we have a very good conversation, and we we came to the conclusion that we believe in feedback because during our conversation, we were always striving to find factors that would allow us to embrace feedback our best. And for instance, if we could feel, essentially in 3 groups, we could find some challenges for embracing effectively feedback. One of it was the content. And if the feedback is not well sustained, if it doesn't provide guidance into a change, a possibility of change in the future, a possibility of growth, of trust in the person who's receiving feedback, that would be most probably not accepted, or at least rejected. For instance, also, it depends on the context. It depends if it's provided anonymously, if it's provided, for instance, by a peer. And for instance, Ricardo told us about a program with peer feedback, peer-to-peer feedback, which is very interesting and allows everyone to feel more prone to accept feedback. If it is given, for instance, for someone who is not considered unbiased in terms of the feedback he or she is providing, if the person who's receiving this feedback doesn't trust this person is giving feedback in an unbiased way, it has his or her own perspective and is not centering the feedback on the person who's receiving feedback. So I believe that these 3, the content, the type of content, how it is built, if it's not providing a guidance into the future, some program in the future to change, and also the context and the credibility of the person could be challenging factors that could jeopardize embracing feedback. Please correct me and complete this message if I'm missing anything, group. And thank you so very much.
Thank you to all the groups for their wonderful discussions and the group reporters for summarizing. Obviously, you spoke a lot more and you had many more wise reflections, but here you're just summarizing some of the key points. So let me go back to, okay, so credibility. And just as group 3 suggested, I had categorized from literature by Joan Sargent and her team, who are based in Dalhousie and other parts of Canada. Diana actually, funnily enough, all of them are Canadian groups of researchers, Christopher Watling and Diana Delva. So I took all the literature and I categorized, just like you did, Luis, recipients, that is the feedback recipients. And in fact, why I didn't say students is because we also as faculty need to receive feedback. So I just put the receivers. So is the feedback conversation focusing on your learning goals, on the recipient's learning goals? How are they doing their self-assessment? We talked about the gap, right? It's like my performance, expected performance. What's the gap between current performance and expected performance? Am I accurately self-assessing? And the other thing is self-efficacy or self-esteem. How do I feel about myself? Is this feedback making me feel small? That's important. Then from the feedback provider side, valence or tone, the tone, is it judgmental? Is it humiliating? Is it harsh? Is the feedback based on firsthand knowledge of my performance as a learner? Did they observe me? Can they give me examples? Or they're just saying, somebody else said your communication skills are not good and I'm giving you the feedback. Immediately, I am going to reject it. Did the person giving me feedback understand my context, my challenges? My performance may have been after a 24-hour shift and I'm tired, or the patient may have been very challenging, angry, and my performance is not reflecting that. And does the learner think that the teacher who is providing the feedback has their best interest at heart, or they're just being criticizing. So that's from the provider side. But I threw in here the relationship side. Is it longitudinal or short term? Sometimes in the clinical setting, we may work with somebody, a learner, for many weeks, or sometimes even a year or 2 years. Well, that is a wonderful, enriching experience because you can watch that person grow. And I think Madalena said this, when you give feedback, and someone else said this as well, there needs to be plans, action plans, but then you need to provide that opportunity to implement those plans. But if it is a short-term relationship, you can still do it. You can then focus on the goals, make sure you're giving it out of goodwill and not trying to humiliate the learner, and tell them, here's the opportunity that you need to continue. Here's your plan. Finally, the institution. What are the institutional expectations of feedback? Does the institution say that what kind of relationship, what kind of alliance you need to form? And then the hidden curriculum. As teachers, especially in the clinical setting, you can imagine, we tell the learner, you need to develop empathy and provide their feedback without any empathy. There is a problem there. The learner is going to reject it right away. So fantastic. So I have basically summarized what all of you have said. I don't think I've added more than 1 or 2 things. Now, the second pearl is mindset. And I think this came up in your conversation, which is from the learner's side. So Carol Dweck is a psychologist from Stanford University. She was the author of this mindset. And she described, after observing children in school trying to solve difficult problems, she watched some children's behaviors and other children's behaviors and described 2 types of mindset. The first one is a growth mindset, which is, even if you're not getting the answer, those children kept on trying. They actually felt motivated. In fact, one of your groups said, motivating the learner is important. They were motivated whether they got the answer or not. And they said, oh, I failed this problem? Fine, I will try harder. I will work hard. I will try something different. So failure is seen as an opportunity to learn and improve. So that's the growth mindset. And then there was a group of people, fixed mindset. Oh, I can't do this. I'm giving up. And, if I'm being given problems that are difficult for me, that is an insult to my talents. I was born with these skills. I was born with this talent. So I'll give up if I don't think it's worth it. So that's the fixed mindset. So image, how I appear to other people is more important than learning. And if we actually look inside ourselves, we probably have both these kinds of mindsets at various times in our life. So I will argue that we as teachers and educational leaders need to think about, how do I promote a growth mindset in my learners, rather than saying, oh, my learners don't have a growth mindset. So has anyone read about mindset? Are you familiar with this? I will type the author's name, and I really, if you're interested, you should read. Carol Dweck. Fantastic little book, easy to read, and it actually tells us how we should actually have a different assumption as a teacher. So going back to the mindset and its effect on performance, if you have a fixed mindset, the goal is to project a positive image to your teachers and your peers. If you have a fixed mindset, hard work is not valued, the result is valued. And reaction to failure is anger or giving up. If you have a growth mindset, the goal is really to keep learning and growing and improving. Effort is valued, not always the results. And failure causes excitement. Oh, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try harder. And here's some sample language. If you want to promote growth mindsets when you're giving feedback, and if you're giving feedback on strengths, don't talk about good job and excellent performance, A+, but instead say the language might be, what is it that you are proud of? What have you learned about yourself in terms of your strengths? Which of your strengths is most useful when you talk to a patient, when you talk to the nurse? Why do you think so? Whom have you helped? Teamwork. And by helping others, how did it make a difference in your life, in your professional life? So if you're talking about a learner challenges, growth mindset language might be, what are you trying to achieve? What is the goal you're trying to achieve? And if it's not happening, if you're not achieving the goal, why do you think it's happening? What are your thoughts on that? What have you tried so far? You may have had similar challenges in the past. What have you done in those situations? How did you try to resolve the challenge? What else might you try? So it's all around effort rather than performance or judgment. So that's the second pearl, mindset. So any comments at all? And then we'll move to the last pearl, which is coaching. So, okay, I'm going to, the last pearl, we're going to finish up with a framework for feedback, which is all around relationships or alliance and coaching, two pillars of it. And the conversation happens in between those two pillars. But I'm going to stop for just a second. How many of you are athletes or you play sports of some kind? Anybody? Okay. Bridge. All right. What else? Any football? Horse riding, swimming. Yeah, more and more people coming up. Okay. Tennis. Yes. Okay. Dance. Oh, perfect. And you can, I can also ask any of your musicians. Dance, music, tennis. Forgot that one. Gosh. So almost piano. Excellent. So we have musicians, dancers, athletes. Yeah, perfect. So I think everyone has more experience than me. So all of you have experience of being coached, right? If somebody can unmute your microphone and tell me in sports, okay, Eduardo, you're it, martial arts, I love it. So I'm going to point out to Eduardo. Tell me, what does your coach in martial arts do? What techniques do they use in coaching? You can tell me one thing, Eduardo.
Dedication.
Dedication, okay. Yeah. Anything else? Now that you've said one thing, you can say a second thing. Okay, we have a one word, dedication. Anything else? What do coaches do? You can unmute and speak. No chat. I'm not going to look at chat. I want to speak.
Encouragement.
Encouragement. Okay.
They show what happens in tennis, at least. They show what we are doing wrong, and the difference, what we get if we, I don't know, or with an arm or the feet or so on. So showing the mistake and results we can get if we try other way.
Perfect. And then I also have role model in the chat. Okay. So what else do coaches?
The dance, my coach said, Don't
Yeah.
be afraid to make a mistake.
Fantastic, Samira. Excellent, excellent.
Find
And
the way to support.
Rejoice
Elena,
when we win. Rejoice when we win.
Okay. And Elena, you had something as well?
Yes, both Elenas. We were talking at the same time. So, I'm Elena. So I was talking about support. I mean, the way of supporting in every moment when you're doing on well, but also when you are falling, when you're not failing, you are not doing right.
Yeah, in connection to that motivation and perseverance.
Okay, they motivate and then encourage you to persevere. Excellent. Now let me ask this. So they motivate, they point out mistakes, but then also point out what to do to correct the mistake, which means they're observing you every step of the way. They provide, so they're challenging you, right? They are pushing you outside your comfort zone, but they're also supporting and motivating. So I want to ask, and then they're very specific. It's not the global, oh, your forehand is no good. They actually will tell Madalena, this is what you're doing, this is why it's not working, and this is what you need to improve. Now tell me something, and I will confess myself, when I started out as a medical educator, I did not follow any of these principles. And is that correct? Do people want to confess today? We'll keep it secret. So the same people who know coaching in another life, you come to medical education and you behave differently, forget all about coaching. So you might enjoy reading Christopher Watling's work. He's from University of Western Ontario, Canada. And he's a musician and he's a neurologist actually. So he basically talks about the medical culture, sports culture, music culture, and how different we are in terms of our reaction to feedback. They say we accept what our learners say without directly observing their performance. We give vague comments. Well, apparently one of the most frequent comments given by medical educators, good job. Or a pleasure, you're a pleasure to work with. And then constructive is read more. Okay, so what can the learner get out of that in terms of improving? So more and more, especially from Canada, they're talking about taking and applying coaching principles into feedback conversations in medical education. So with that, I will share just this model. And of course, I will say, not all aspects of sports or music culture can be directly applied to a clinical culture, but think about what can be applied and let's use that. So this is the R2C2 model, 2 R's, 2 C's. And the first person to describe was Joan Sargent from Dalhousie University. And then she formed a team with a lot of people, Maastricht, United States, New Jersey, and then Calgary, University of Calgary. And the team is still working on the R2C2 model and improving it. But let me explain this model to you. The first R, they say you cannot start a feedback conversation unless you've built some relationships and rapport. Now, longitudinal, if you're going to work with this person for a while, then you have a conversation where you're building that rapport. But if you're only going to work on 1 day, 2 days, you can still build the rapport, say, what is it that you want to work on? What do you find challenging? How can I help? That's all it takes, 1 minute, 60 seconds. People say, oh, I'm not working with this person for a long time. I don't have the time. I just did it in 30 seconds. Use the learner goals as a focus for performance observation. But then if the learner is not making appropriate goals we can guide as teachers. That's the first R. Now you go into the observation. At the end of the observation, it can be 5 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, but it's performance of a very specific skill. And then after the observation, the second R comes in. Help the learner to reflect. And I think you talked about the emotional responses. Allow them to express their emotions. Oh, I did so badly. That really didn't go well. Oh, I think that went extremely well. I'm so happy. So the emotion, we don't need to be specific yet, but that emotion is important. So let them have the emotional reactions and then reflect. How did it go? What do you think you did well? And what do you think did not go so well? Once the reflection has happened, we go to the first C. Now we discuss more details. The content of the conversation comes in. So let's talk about what you did well. Well, you did not make eye contact with the patient. You did not wait for the patients to ask questions. So very detailed. And I think you had talked about this before, specifics, focus, absolutely. And you don't have to give, oh, you did 100 things wrong. I'm going to tell you 50, and that's it. They're going to feel depressed already. Focus. And at the end, towards the end of the first C, the content, clarify, is there anything I said that did not make sense to you? Or you think it's not accurate? Let's discuss that. And at the end, finish this phase by saying, okay, based on our conversation, can you think of 2 or 3 things that you want to improve? No action plans yet. That's coming in the coaching. What are 2 or 3 things you want to work on to improve? And then you finish up with the actual coaching. Okay, let's discuss how to improve this. How much time are you going to take? Who is going to observe you next time? And how are you going to ensure that you actually improve? So R2, C2. Okay, I won't read, I will send these slides to Madalena so that you can have this, but I have written down some specific language for each phase. The first is relationships and the rapport. 2 is the reactions and reflections. 3 is content, the actual discussion of the performance. And 4 is the action plans or the actual coaching. Okay, so I will stop sharing and I will, now you can have conversations around this model and feedback. Do people use any of these? Are people aware of this model? Okay, so Joan Sargent, and when I send the handout, you'll have the references as well. Okay, so Sargent, SARGEA. Oh, you look R2C2, you'll find a list of multiple papers. In fact, the last paper I joined the team and I was a co-author, so it was last year. Right now we are collecting data for, feedback conversations between a supervisor and a resident who are working together in the outpatient setting, so longitudinal relationship. So here's one thing I will say. You don't have to do everything in every conversation. So focus. Even the feedback should be focused. Okay? So otherwise, as teachers, we get depressed also. Oh, I did that wrong. Our own emotional reaction, our own R2C2 becomes emotional reaction. Oh, I'm terrible at feedback. I'm not going to give feedback anymore. Okay, we shouldn't do that. Let's focus how to design this conversation, how to implement the conversation, little bite-sized as they call it. So I think, where are we? We are probably at, what do you think, Madalena?
As you wish, Subha.
Okay, so I think the didactic part is good. I want people to, give your reflections on what we discussed: credibility, mindset, and coaching. So what do people think? How are you going to use this in your own feedback life? Unmute and speak. Yes.
You want to make it easy for everyone? Subha, do you want to put the 3 dimensions in the chat so that people can be inspired, maybe? You want me to put?
Yeah, Elena has raised her hand. Go ahead, Elena.
Thank you. I think it has been so very interesting to be able to combine these 3 different aspects. I think somehow I have to teach at my faculty communication skills, and somehow, I have been teaching for about 20 years, and more is like this feedback had been somehow, we have been combining this feedback with some other aspects, and some weeks ago, I have been talking with another colleague about this coaching process, and I feel now, because of we are teaching in this virtual way of, there's no other option. So we have been teaching in small groups all the time, and the feeling is that we have been able to do this coaching process combined with, feedback, coaching process. And I think this idea of the mindset is also so very important, because at the end, it has been, the students told us, the last semester and now again, that they have been feeling much comfortable in the process.
Interesting.
They have been feeling more happier with the whole process. They have been seeing the way they have been progressing. The other students have been helping in this co-evaluation process. And is this idea of this feedback is more credible? It has been really meant for them. We have been trying to encourage them, and so then can be able to go on with it in a more positive way. So at the end, I think, not knowing this combination, we have been through this combination, especially in the last year, maybe, and the results are so wonderful. The students are happy. They said, we have been learning, but most of all, we have been enjoying these classes. It has been a good time, and so then is the feeling that they have been really able to learn, and in a good way somehow. So thanks for the chance.
Oh, and so you have promoted a growth mindset. You are not evaluating. So this is one thing that's important point you're making. We have to separate assessment and feedback. Feedback is about people's growth. Assessment is about judgment. I think we need to separate the 2. Thank you, Elena. Other comments, reflections, Madalena?
Yes, because you are talking about something that always puzzled me, and it's the following. If I completely agree that we need to be in an open, let's say, environment, and the students have the right to say wrong things, and we cannot be taking notes and putting in our paper everything they said, then evaluate. I think this killed the teaching. I also think that when they have a moment for assessment, and if it's a summative assessment with consequences, I'd like to see and to have them having feedback, because I think that particular, maybe you have some solutions. In our situation, we have more than 350 students per year, and lots of, even if I'm not talking of the practical classes, but for instance, multiple choice test and so on, I can't understand why we don't create a large auditorium and the teacher calling all the students and showing what they magnify and how the whole class have the assessments and so on. So if you can give me, because I don't see this done, and I think it would be so important. There is always the question of giving the questions, and there are not too many good questions, so teachers don't like. How do you solve this, Subha? These contradictory feelings.
No, yeah, today I was focusing much more on the feedback as a one-on-one conversation, but what you're talking about is more of the summative feedback after an assessment. And I think I can think of, we're talking about assessment for learning rather than just of learning. To a certain extent, we are doing certification, promotion, remediation. But when we recertify in our board exams, for example, we get a printout afterwards with the results, the questions that we got wrong and why, and an explanation and resources.
You do for every student?
Yes, there is, in fact, yes, for the board exams, for the residency, you do. I think even students do. So when they get their results, here are the areas that you got wrong. So students are able to get that feedback. And then also why they give the answers. They give the right answer and some explanations. So that there, it's not like I'm wrong, but then there's an explanation. Here's the right answer and this is why. So they're learning along with it. But you're right, and it can be done in person at the end of the class, at the end of the assessment. Certainly can be done, but then it can also be automated from the examining agency. You can have it. So I think with electronic technology available, it can be done as a learning process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Helena?
I was thinking about the triad that you focused, Subha, about credibility and mindset in coach. And I was wondering, such as the powerful, at least on my perspective of mindset, could that be that mindset kind of open up arms and if you have a certain mindset and your learners as well, or can learn from you, will that influence the credibility from one side and on the other side, the coaching? I mean, so it's so big, the growth mindset thing, just kind of imagining some diagram or something like that, instead of having the pearls there and having something, I don't know, just a thought. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, no, at least for the sake of the workshop itself, I just keep them separate. They definitely are intersecting. Well, I put the three shells together. Yes, you can think of them going round and round, but definitely I think mindset influences learning. Mindset influences whether you seek feedback. Mindset influences how you formulate goals. Mindset influences how you accept or reject feedback, and then come up with action plans so that you can continue to grow. So yes, mindset, I would say, influences probably everything. Because if you don't have a growth mindset, then you will perceive your teacher's feedback as not credible. So absolutely. Because actually there's some work, and Louis, I'm coming to you, there is work done about if the teacher's assessment conflicts with the self-assessment, even if self-assessment is not accurate, the learners reject feedback. So mindset. Louis?
I was just wondering, from what I have listened, that a sort of culture of repeated feedback could change mindset. Am I correct?
Oh, so the culture of, yes, absolutely. The culture, in fact, Chris Watling has written a lot about feedback culture or the learning culture. So some of my residents, I do mostly postgraduate education and staff development. And many of my residents, they do combined programs. They're also doing an MBA at the business school because they're doing a leadership program. And they came back, and when I did focus groups with them, they said they behave a certain way when feedback is given at the business school, and they behave a certain way when they come back to the clinical environment and feedback is given. They themselves said, I have a growth mindset there and I have a fixed mindset here. So what is the difference? The culture. The business school says on day one, all of us will have strengths and weaknesses. We will give feedback, we will seek feedback, we will accept feedback, and you will give feedback to the teachers as well. So that's the culture of feedback, which we don't have in the clinical culture. So absolutely right. Isabel?
Why
Thank
do you
you.
think? Why do you think there is no clinical, no culture, feedback culture in the clinical setting?
Yeah, good question. We have a culture, but the culture is different. So the culture, I think I will say this. We clinical people are very kind people. We don't want to say anything harsh to our learners. Is that true? We don't, and in fact, I wrote in my paper, it's called politeness theory, which is we don't want to harm their self-esteem, and we don't want to spoil our relationship with our learners. So frequently in the Western culture, not so much in Asian culture, I will tell you, we avoid giving any constructive feedback. Oh, you know, I don't want to spoil my relationship with with my student or learner. And because we're constantly talking about communication skills and empathy. So it's a different kind of a culture. So on the other hand, the business school, their culture is much more, you know, direct. So we probably need a mix of the two. So it's not that we don't have a culture. We have a culture of politeness and kindness that gets in the way of how we have feedback conversations. So our kindness actually is damaging in this way. Would you agree?
Yes, I also think at least in Portugal, is very competitive. The admission on medical school and all the medical career very competitive, and people tend to want for themselves to be the best and to be perfect. And I think this makes all the question of feedback more in the sense you mean kindness, and on the receiver side, challenging or being evaluated or not so natural. The feedback does not come so natural, I think.
Sure, that's one part of it.
Yes, yeah. Or doing the feedback in groups, in students in front of each other, or making students evaluate each other. All these things are not very popular, I think, in the medical.
Totally agree.
Culture.
And I will say, and again, learning culture is something that Chris Watling had written, and in my PhD, I took it a little further. And if you read my paper, there's a psychological theory called politeness theory. It is not about being polite, but actually it's a concept of, I don't know if you know the term saving face. So,
yes.
Right? Yeah, our face is how others see us. So saving face becomes very important to us. And there are two things. One is called positive face, which is our self-esteem, how we think of ourselves and how we want others to think of us, the self-esteem. And the other is called, this is going deep into psychology, the other is called negative face, which is we don't want other people to intrude or interfere with our actions, meaning autonomy. So I saw this as self-esteem and autonomy. Okay.
But Subha, you are talking, and Isabel was talking in the difficulty of the very bright and the very top students, very competitive, as she said, and so on. And I think they are really hard. On the opposite, I think the students who failed, and we have said this in the group, but it was so quickly, during many years, and I think I like to give feedback, and I think I don't give very bad feedback, but I was surprised when those who failed the exams, 8 days after, for instance, if it was a portfolio, when they came back, after I have been talking half an hour with them or so and agreed, they came exactly where they are. So the Chinese saying that to listen is not the same as to hear is not the same as understanding is not the same, and so on. I'm not going to say the 8 things, but I really think that many times we are not aware on what should be done, namely with the weak students, to have them understanding what we are talking. And this is terrible. This is why now I try always to ask, so what have we been talking? So what do you have to do? Because in the past I was very happy and then it was awful again. So any experience on this, or it's only Madalena? Maybe. So yeah, it was incredible. But with the weak ones, I'm not talking about good students.
So there is a lot of work on self-awareness and self-assessment. And the stronger people, actually, let me take it back. So we are not as good at self-assessment as we think we are. That goes for us. And it's even more for our learners who are more immature in their development. Okay. And the literature, the studies have shown that we are better at self-assessing our strengths, but we are very bad at assessing our weaknesses. In fact, we are unconsciously incompetent. So we overestimate. Therefore, that's the problem. So therefore, I think as educational leaders and as educators, perhaps we need to first think about how we increase the self-awareness of our students. And it's actually called, self-assessment is called informed self-assessment, meaning you don't just sit and assess yourself, but I will provide you the data through which you self-assess. Your peers, how they've assessed you, your teachers, how they've assessed you, your clinical staff, how they've assessed you. Take all these data, and then your self-assessment is informed by real data of other people's perceptions. And then you know how your self-assessment, whether it's accurate or not accurate. So as teachers and as advisors, and they say, then you facilitate self-reflection after informed self-assessment. So you're absolutely right. There is enough literature, enough research that says that we are not as good at self-assessment as we think we are.
Actually, we did some years ago, Madalena, you remember, we asked the students to estimate the classification they would have in one particular exam. And then we compared the real classification with the expected classification. And it was funny because the students in the middle, they had a very good correlation in what they expected and what they had. But students in the lower side, I mean, students with the lower scores, some of them who actually failed, they thought they would have a very high score. So they had no idea. They had no idea. They were completely unprepared And on the other side, those who had very good classifications, sometimes they self-assess them lower.
But it was so strong what Isabel is saying, because again, we had, I don't know, maybe 360 students or 380, because they have done this at the examination, at the final exams. And if the more, almost 300 had a difference of 0.3, 0.030 or 0.50, around 64 students, 74 in practical, in portfolios, and even in the theoretical, which in the areas were just valuing 8 points, they can fail in 4 points or more. So could you believe to have a medical student that for a portfolio of 8 values with criteria described and everything failed in 4 points what he's going to have, and more, not in portfolio can be somehow subjective, but the other, the knowledge test, it was short answers, and also in the practical, and always that percentage, around 74, 64, 68, and so on. So this is dramatic. And I think the universities are not paying attention to this, and students are never asked to give or to assess themselves before being assessed, even in practical, by the tutors. Isabel, I would like very much to be back on this at our school.
Yes.
We cannot sleep on this.
Madalena, I just typed in the chat, the Dunning-Kruger effect. And if you want to look that up, so there are 2 parts of, two aspects to how we self-assess. And I will say that we also probably don't do as good a job as we think we do. So two aspects. One is the developmental part, which is from novice to mastery.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a novice, you inflate your performance, your scores. Your self-assessment is very, very high. You're unconsciously incompetent, meaning you're very confident, but not very competent. Okay, because you don't know what you don't know yet. And then as you develop you become an advanced beginner, then you go to expert, you actually go down. Your self-assessment first goes down because suddenly you realize all these things that you don't exactly. You're consciously incompetent at this point. So your own self-assessment goes deep down. And then slowly with mastery of an area, we're not masters of all areas. You slowly come back up. Your confidence now matches your competence. So that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The second aspect of self-assessment, we are better at assessing our strengths and terrible at assessing our weaknesses. And there's research, Glenn Rigger from British Columbia has done a lot of research, said whenever we make a mistake, we blame everything around us. The patient was very angry and was very challenging. The nurse was not helpful. There was an earthquake in that moment. The dog barked. I mean, just think about everything. We blame the whole world for it. And so our self-assessment of our weaknesses is very, very bad. We go back, even if we have mastery in an area, in another area, we go back to unconscious incompetence. This is humanity, I think. So what we need to do as educators and institutions is how do we nurture the self-awareness from amongst our learners? And how do we also establish a safe environment in which we say, we'll all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. Now let's discuss both. So I think that yes, Luis.
May I just add something to this conversation, which is very interesting. But I have a feeling that very often the high performance students are also perfectionists. and they tend to under-evaluate his or her efforts and performances. Am I right or not?
Sometimes.
Apparently, in the research done by Glenn Rigger, I say even you are right partially, but if the high achievers have areas of weaknesses, as all of us do, they still underestimate the weaknesses. They are pretty good at their strengths. So you are partially correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Subha, maybe the last question or something you want to say? We have still 3 minutes because all these people have private lives, maybe kids, husbands, and everything waiting for us.
Work
Oh,
to
they're
do.
supposed to have private lives?
Oh, I don't know.
No, okay. No, any last words from anyone? Because this is really a conversation, as I said at the beginning.
So, dears, I'm seeing your faces and the ones who are without video, at least to say goodbye, could you put your video on? Good, guys. Good.
Subha, it was a pleasure and a privilege to participate in this seminar. Thank you to Lisbon University, and thank you to you, and thank you to all participants.
Yes, thank you to all the participants, because you were so engaged in the small groups, and any workshop is only successful when there is interaction. Because you're all advanced professionals. If it was one way, it wouldn't be successful. So thank you. And it was wonderful to meet all of you. Maybe we'll meet in person at some point in the future.
Thank you very much. It was very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Subha. I think
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Madalena, and the people from Lisboa to inviting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. All these people, Subha, Isabel, and Luis, are for excellent. I would say the majority it's in the departments of medical education or not, but they are doing great in their country. That's why they were invited. So
absolutely
a good group. And thank you, Subha. I will be back to you tomorrow. I leave you in today.